Welcome indeed. How many people are here with their families? How many people's family is far away? How many people's family is normal? Well, hold your enthusiasm, because I want you to think of your family of origin, which most of us know, but there are some people who are adopted who don't know their family of origin. And then if you're old enough or have had the experience of having a family of your own, children of your own, think of that family. And if you have reached the point in life where your children have children and they are a family, think of them. And then think of the way that some politicians define what a family is. So think of your family. First, does it have children? Is that what makes a family? And are the two parents male and female? Are they of the same race? The same religion? Hopefully they were married before the first pregnancy. For some of you, you might need to do the math, say mom and dad's anniversary was this, and I was born 7 months later. My mother was a nurse, and she informed me that the first pregnancy can take any length, all other ones take 9 months. And were the children conceived by intercourse, no fertility treatments or adoption? We want the kids to come in a normal way. And let's hope that you have between 2 and 4 kids, because one kid's just kind of strange, because you know that only child's going to be spoiled. And more than 4 kids, come on, are you crazy? So what does your society say is normal? And of course, in that normal family, you probably should have one of each sex, providing that you have only boys and girls. If you have 3 kids and you have a boy and a girl and a transgender, there are lots of people who won't think that that's normal. But whatever they are, those children should be straight. Now, I was seeing an internet meme that said, a little poster that says, having a gay child doesn't mean you have failed as a parent. Kicking your gay child out of the house probably does. And then amongst those children, let's hope there's no developmental delays, because that's not what some people consider normal. And no mental illness in the parents or the kids, or a physical disability, because then you're one of those special needs families, or addiction issues. You know, I'm sure you know, those who had experience with that kind of makes life kind of weird, you know, all those problems of people struggling with alcohol or other drugs or meth or something. So, but because like a real family, a real normal family has a dad that works with a job that's good enough that he can afford to buy a home, so you're not really just renting or living in some other place, because that's what the American dream is. And mom stays at home to take care of the kids. because that's the traditional family of the family values crowd. And during this whole time, no child or parent should die because while the kids are young, that just puts such a strain on a family and it makes things so difficult. So like that's not a normal family. That's a family that has problems. And then, of course, no divorce. Till death do us part. Even if not parting means the death of you, to death do us part. And I remember the Meatloaf song where the young man is trying to convince a girl to be intimate, and he says, "Promise I'll love you to the end of time." And she makes him promise that he will love her to the end of time. And then the next chorus, the couple is singing together, "Now we're praying for the end of time." To hurry up and arrive, because if I have to spend another minute with you, I don't think that I'll be able to survive. So in thinking of all the ways that the world might judge your family, how many people here have a normal family? We still have a couple. I'm looking at them and I'm wondering if they're normal people, though. That family values are not making people fit into a neat and comfortable slot. It's making families, valuing families, no matter how they're constructed. Now, some in the family values will note that it was Adam and Eve and not Adam and Steve. But Adam and Eve's family was not without its problems and abnormalities. First, one son murdered the other, and then he went and took a bride east of Eden. Who this girl was, or whether she was even human, because since Adam and Eve were the first two humans, we don't know who this bride was. And they went on to have other children who had children, which, if you do the math, there was some incest going on in that family. But there are other examples of biblical families that people might look to, like Noah and his wife. They stayed married, and they had 3 sons who got married. They had an odd living arrangement. They didn't each have their own house. They had this kind of ark thing, and lots of pets. Too many pets, in my opinion. And then there was Abraham, who was married to Sarah. Sarah was his half-sister. And so when they would get into tense political situations in Egypt, he would say, "Oh, yes, Pharaoh, you can be with my sister." And then the Pharaoh would find that she was also his wife. And that's not really good family behavior. And Abraham wasn't able to have a child with Sarah, so he ran out of patience and had sex with his slave Hagar, and that was the child Ishmael was born. And then 2 angels, or perhaps fertility doctors, came, and Sarah was then able to conceive, and they gave birth to Isaac. And depending on whether you're trusting the Quran or you're trusting the Bible, Abraham tried to sacrificed Ishmael or Isaac. I think it doesn't really matter the religious difference between Judaism and Islam in this case. I think it's just wrong to try to sacrifice your son. Now, Abraham's nephew, Lot, was married, had a couple of daughters, and 2 guests came to the house, and they wanted to rape the guests. They had a nice little 2-bedroom home in Sodom, and he had a job. He commuted to Gomorrah, but this mob was just crazy, and they wanted to rape these strangers who had come into town. So Lot, being a good neighbor, says, "You know how our culture is. We always welcome strangers. So why don't you rape my 2 daughters instead?" Well, ended up that they didn't accept that, and eventually they all escaped, and Lot and his family escaped Sodom, and the wife looked back and turned into salt, and that's not normal marriage behavior. And then the daughters are living in a cave with Dad, worried that they can't meet men and have children. So the only solution they come up with is to get Dad drunk and take turns. Again, these are biblical family values that I don't recommend to any of you. Now Isaac, he marries and has sons Jacob and Esau, and Jacob cheats Esau out of his inheritance. And Jacob wants to marry Rachel, and that's the daughter of Laban, and he says, well, in order to marry my daughter, you have to work for me for 7 years. And Rachel must have been quite a looker, because he said, I am going to work for 7 years. At the end of 7 years, Laban says, there's a problem. There's a problem. See, Rachel's older sister Leah has not been married yet, and you can't marry off the second daughter before the first. So you'll have to marry Leah. So he marries Leah, and then Laban, who must have been a good negotiator, said, "If you work for me for another 7 years, then I'll let you have Rachel." Now, nobody ever asked if Leah or Rachel had any opinion in this matter. It seemed to be all between the father-in-law and the husband. And so he marries Rachel, and he had 10 children with Leah, and he had 2 more with Rachel. And of course, he favors the firstborn of the second wife that he loves, which causes the other 10 sons to throw Joseph into a pit and sell him into slavery, and then come back and bring a bloody shirt and say, oh, he was ripped apart by lions, and they tell the dad he died. So the Jews are in Egypt in slavery, and Moses is born. They think that they're going to kill Jewish children, so his mother puts him in a basket, leaves him on the doorstep of the princess who adopts him. Not a normal child custody procedure. That if you have a child, Indiana has a law that you can go to any hospital, police station, no questions asked. Do not put your child in a basket in the river. Even though it's in the Bible, I don't think it's good family values. And then Moses has to be exiled from Egypt for a while. He goes to the land of Cush, and he marries a Cushite woman. Cushite is biblical for black. Now, this is one of my favorite curses in the Bible. His brother and sister get kind of all mad at him for marrying this black woman. And so then Moses curses them, and they get leprosy and turn white. I thought, you're not white enough. You should have leprosy and have your skin just flake off. But then they got over that family spat, and they led the people to the promised land, and that was good. And they're in the promised land. They eventually came to have a king. And David, before he became king, is said to have loved the son of the previous king, Saul. He loved Jonathan with a love exceeding that of women. But that childhood fling passed away, and he becomes king, and he marries his first wife. And then he sees Bathsheba, a married woman, bathing. And he says, I want her for my wife too. And he sends her husband to die in war so he can marry Bathsheba. Now that's pretty despicable among David. And then there's lots of problems in David's family because people don't know what the line of succession is. And one of his stepsons rapes a stepsister, and then there's a fight for power, and there's Absalom, and there's just all this kind of killing. And again, not a normal family. Out of all that crazy mess, Solomon rises to be the king, and he believed in marriage because he got married 700 times. And he had 300 concubines. And I kind of feel for the concubines, because if somebody marries 700 times, their standards you might think are a little bit low, but yet somehow you can't get into that group of 700, that exclusive club. The prophet Hosea married a harlot, a prostitute, and then uses her as an audio-visual aid for his ministry. He tells the people that God loves Israel, even though Israel plays the harlot with all these other false gods in surrounding territories. But that's the Old Testament. Surely the New Testament is much better. Because, the story begins with Mary being an unwed mother and Joseph being either faithful or gullible and believing her story. And they have a baby, and it's not born in I wanted to say stable household, but it really is a stable household. And that son, Jesus, never married. And then you get debate between Protestants and Catholics of whether Mary had any other children. The Bible says that Jesus had brothers and sisters, but were they figurative brothers and sisters, or were they biological? That's unclear in the realm of Christendom. But Jesus, according to the Gospels in the Bible, was never married. Although there is a Gospel of Mary that says that he was married to Mary Magdalene. If you want to know more about this, read Dan Brown's book or the book The Last Temptation of Christ. It's been, there's some good speculation around Jesus' possible wife. Among the disciples, they don't really say who was married for most of them, but they do mention that Peter was married. And they don't mention children. And it gets mentioned because Paul is talking about his own self, and he grudgingly accepts that Peter is married, saying that it's better to marry than to burn with lust. But Paul, being righteous, maybe a little too self-righteous, says, but I'll stay single because that's really the right way to go. And so then you have conflict again between Protestants and Catholics about whether priests should be married or unmarried. So that marriage is, in some ways, second place to celibacy in some traditions. So you have in the biblical record not the examples that the family council wants people to have. And then, so what is a family? What really constitutes a family? There's the biology of it, where that male and female begat child. There's DNA linkages. But I think all of us have experienced where sometimes that family is not family. My daughter, my legal stepdaughter, calls me Dad. And while her biological father was alive, she referred to him as sperm donor. I think I was more in the family than this man. That speaks to reliability. Family are those people that have your back, that somehow say, you're all right. Gee, even if you have done bad things, we still love you. We're going to help pay for a lawyer, or if you can't afford a lawyer, we will at least call you when you're in jail. We're there for you. They're people you can trust. And then there's the quality of nurture. That people who give and receive love, kindness, wisdom, all the things that are shared. Some of us found that in our biological family. Some of us have found that elsewhere. Some of us find it in children. Some of us find it in pets. Some of us find it in other non-married people that are connected. And then there's a tricky thing about family. I like to think that this is part of the definition of family, but I've had enough experience with family to know that it not necessarily is. It's an affinity. You just kind of like your family. And sometimes that's true and sometimes it isn't. But the idea of going home for Thanksgiving or Easter dinner or something that will be at least somewhat enjoyable. And if the family of origin isn't enjoyable, that people might gather the family that they might call their real family around them, those people who they know are reliable, trusting, and nurturing, and kind. So I want to you to think of your own family and some of your experiences, and those who are willing can share that with the others to say, what family has meant to you, and how many families are you in? There's so many different ways to define families. We might find ourselves in multiple families. So think about the things that you value the most in family. What are the values that let you know that a family is present?